About a year ago, I started working at a fast food restaurant in the town that I just moved into. It was a new place for me, so it was difficult to find somewhere to work. Finally, I found this job at this restaurant and the place situated near my home as well, so it was pretty convenient for me to work there. It was privately owned and was famous among people due to the diverse menu it offered with different cuisines. But it had a dark secret hidden behind its walls. It was something that people were not aware of, besides those who worked there or those who owned it. This restaurant had been a place of mysterious death for the two people who previously owned it. Both of the previous owners died mysteriously, sitting in the room just at the back of this restaurant. People didn't know the reason for those frequent deaths, so they were not bothered about it. We were not aware of these incidents as well until one day when our boss gathered us in the dining area for a staff meeting, as she had to discuss something really important. As we sat quietly listening to the boss, something peculiar occurred. The front entrance door to the restaurant suddenly opened halfway and then closed carefully after a moment, as if someone had entered or left the place. However, there was no one on the other side since the door was mostly glass, and we would have seen anyone. We exchanged confused glances, but attributed it to a breeze considering that the back door was open. But our boss said, "This is what I wanted to talk about in the first place. This restaurant has been famous for paranormal incidents for a very long time, and that is considered to be the reason for the tragic and mysterious deaths of its previous owners. So I wanted to let you know that those incidents have emerged again, but there is nothing to be worried about. It will pass on in some time, and everything will be back to normal again. We all were scared, but none of us wanted to leave the place, and we were hopeful as well that it would get better with time. But those paranormal incidents kept on happening. Another strange incident involved a coworker who was at the restaurant alone one night. According to her, shortly after turning a corner past the shelf with tools, an empty cordless drill case flew past her head, narrowly missing her and crashing into the wall. She seemed quite disturbed when she recounted the experience to us in the kitchen the next day. Our boss occasionally asked us why someone hadn't entered her office when she saw one of us walking by her open door, even though none of us had passed her office during those times. Additionally, we heard faint voices, doors opening or closing unexpectedly, and some creepy eerie whispers just behind our ears. I used to feel someone breathing just beside me, and when I used to turn around to look, there was no one in the kitchen except for me. However, the most terrifying paranormal experience occurred later. One night, it was probably about 11, there was no one in the restaurant, and my boss and I were on the cooking line, and another employee was on dishwasher duty, and all three of us were working in the kitchen. Everything was normal, until suddenly we heard someone whispering in a very low voice that none of us understood, but we were sure that we heard it. That left us all in a state of shock. We exchanged puzzled looks. "What the hell?" I exclaimed. "Who was it? And why is it so eerily quiet all of a sudden?" I questioned the dishwasher, looking suspicious. My boss, too, seemed unsettled. "I don't know," she replied nervously, with her voice trailing off. She turned to me and instructed me to check if the fridges and hood fans were running. As I made my way near the fridge, I felt as if someone had just taken a deep breath just behind my ear. I really felt the heat. I quickly ran back to my boss. and told her that everything was working fine, but there was something else near us here. All of a sudden, we started hearing those whispers again. This time they were quite loud. After a few minutes, I began to experience tunnel vision, dizziness, and nausea. I informed my boss, who advised me to step outside for fresh air. I followed her suggestion. While I was outside, I'd overheard my boss making a phone call from her office. She sounded urgent and shaky as she asked the person on the other end for an abalone shell, sage, and some peculiar oil. It turned out that she needed these items because, according to her, she had sensed something malevolent walking through her in the kitchen. At the end of the call, she also asked for an exorcist. That turned out to be a call to a nearby church, which had an exorcist specialized in paranormal investigations. I waited until she finished her call and returned to the kitchen. By that time, everything sounded normal again. As I finished my shift about an hour later, I drove home in record time, taking just under 30 minutes for the usually 45-minute journey. Throughout the night, I struggled to sleep, feeling on edge. When I did manage to drift into slumber, I was abruptly awakened multiple times by terrifying visions of a screaming demon-like figure right in front of my face. And when I got to the restaurant the very next day, I found police had surrounded the place all over, and my colleagues were standing there, crying along with the exorcist that came from the church. When I got near them, I got to know that our boss was mysteriously found dead today in her office. That death shook us all to the ground, and no one dared to buy the restaurant after that. Since then, the restaurant remains closed.